So hi everybody, this is Kelly. I'm in a bad mood because I'm getting a bunch of crap from the rest of the people on the show. Welcome back to Squat
So you
Cobbler.
don't even know the name of the show,
Here we go.
Kelly.
Here we go. Bring it. Take two. Hi everybody, welcome back to Squat Cobbler. I'm Kelly at KELLYTHUL on Twitter and Instagram, and unfortunately, is with me as always is Mike.
Hello, everybody. I am Dr. Mike. You can find me at Official Pagan on everything. See, I remembered.
Very good. Super impressive. And we have a very special guest, Dave LaGreca. And Dave, why don't you give folks a little bit of the info on how they can connect with you and maybe tell them a little bit about some of the other stuff you do.
Well, thanks for doing your research before having me on. That I actually have to say everything. That's very nice of you, Kelly. No, I'm a host on Busted Open that you can listen to every day, 9 a.m. to noon. Monday through Friday on channel 156, and you can follow me on social media at David LaGreca1, and also you can buy my merchandise at ProWrestlingTees.com, and I'm available on Cameo. So there you go.
That's more than us.
So that's something that you guys should think about. You guys need to start selling stuff.
We've got T-shirt ideas. We've had a lot of T-shirt ideas that we could parade out. But
the problem is most of Kelly's merch ideas tend to be offensive slogans.
Yeah.
So
that's the way it works.
90% of my job is walking back the things he says.
Okay. Well, any listener to the show knows about how true that is. Tell you what, though, folks, what we're going to do today, super awesome that, as you know, for Squat Cobbler, we do a lot of stuff on retro gaming. We also love to talk about Alice Cooper and have quite a bit out there on them. It was awesome that Dave ran across our content and had a nice thing to say about it on Twitter. Thank you very much for that, by the way. Could have included a link to the show. That'd have been nice, but it was nice that you said something nice about it.
True. No, you're right. I should have. I will now that I'm, a guest on the show. So this is awesome. I'm so glad that you guys let me be on. I know you don't do a lot of guests, so I really appreciate you doing this because I'm a lifelong Alice Cooper fan, and Alice is a Hall of Famer. He's a legend, but there's not a lot of people doing what you guys do, and you guys do a tremendous job. So it's a pleasure being on with you guys today.
Well, we really appreciate it, and we've thrown out a few times to kind of say, hey, if you want to come on, folks, and you want to debate us on this or that, and hadn't got a lot of folks. We did actually, an album we'll be talking some tonight for Raise Your Fist and Yell. We did actually have someone join us. And who acted as a quasi-advocate for the album, and so that was pretty good. But this is super cool. We hope to have it happen anymore. And I did do some research on your stuff, Dave, and I do enjoy your shows as well. So I'm a big wrestler,
which is impressive because Kelly has no idea what I do. He keeps telling people I'm not a real doctor. Yeah. So
yeah, what
you are.
Yeah,
but Kelly, I know because I see you. I know I saw the picture on social media of you and Ric Flair.
Yep.
Those are my two heroes are Ric Flair and Alice Cooper. So the fact that you're a wrestling fan, I do a show with Mark Henry and Bubba Ray Dudley and Tommy Dreamer. So
yeah, I saw that was I've seen a couple of those episodes. I'm a big. How can you not be a Bubba Ray fan? Mark Henry as well, so it was pretty
okay,
awesome.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, and I got a pretty cool one with Mick Foley too. So that was my other opportunity to get a photo with Mick at one point. So
I have a really good Mick Foley story when it comes to Alice Cooper.
Well, that seems like a very reasonable way to start the show off.
Because thankfully, because of our show, a big fan of Busted Open is guitarist of Alice Cooper, Anita Strauss. So she invited both Mick and I to a few of the Alice Cooper concerts, and I in Albany was on the side of the stage, on stage with Alice with Mick Foley. So that's probably my number one concert moment when it comes to Alice. So that's my Mick Foley story.
That's a good story.
Not only is that a good story, I got nervous for a second because I don't know if you know this. Kelly has been openly threatening Chuck Garric on this show.
I
glad you
heard.
didn't say
punching them in the face. You want to punch
Yes.
him in the face?
No. It's a unit of measurement. If I had said I'd give him a high five, we both would be extending our arms. That length would be incorrect, and I'm just trying to be an accurate journalist reporting on it. And the distance was punch distance. That was the distance. So I have no interest, and I'd like to point out I didn't. So clearly, if I could have punched him in the face and I didn't, I don't want to.
Well, I mean, we haven't been to any concerts in the last year, so you haven't had an opportunity to do it the last 13 months. So.
Yep.
He's really been building up to it. Like the threats just keep getting more violent.
Yeah. Hey, how about we talk Alice Cooper, folks?
Okay, sorry.
that would be pretty tough. So Dave was cool enough to go through all 28 albums and do his ranking. And you mentioned in the note when you sent it to me that was not that easy.
Very difficult.
Yeah, and how many times did you kind of go back and readjust?
You know what? It's odd. The top of my list, it was like a no-brainer. Like my top 10, I didn't have any problem with. It's once you get to the middle and the bottom is where I kind of really struggled. Like it was very, very difficult. And I think you guys talked about it on this show. Like Detroit Stories, the first time I heard it, I really loved it. And you guys were not critical of it, but I think you were like, it's kind of middle of the pack. And I thought it would be higher. And it turned out that I probably had it even lower on my list than you did. So that bottom half of the list was a real struggle for me.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird because the bottom half isn't necessarily the bottom half. Now, there's definitely a floor. There's a few down there that are maybe not so great. But even in that bottom third, there's a lot of good albums in the bottom third. It's just he's done so much good stuff. So what I thought we'd do is since Dave's the guest, we will use his list as our anchor point. So we'll just kind of start from the bottom to the top. We're not going to talk about every album. I did do a little bit of homework prior to the show and did some analysis of our list, and there were some discoveries I found, which is we are in 100% agreement or within maybe one position on the list for a couple of them. But for Killer, Brutal Planet, School's Out, Eyes of Alice Cooper, Easy Action, and Pretty for You, those all basically sit in the exact same spot on all of our lists. So out of 28 albums, 6 of them, we are dead even.
Okay.
Those types of things.
All right, so we can agree on some things. I can tell right now that Mike can't wait to jump on me about Raise Your Fist and Yell. I know he's just salivating to get to that. So
I'm going to just to prepare you for where you'll get attacked from. I'm going to be coming at you on Raise Your Fist and Yell. Paranormal.
Yeah, it's more of I don't love it. Don't get me wrong, but that is Kelly's personal burning almost as much as he wants to punch Chuck Garric in the face. Does he hate Raise Your Fist and Yell? I really need to look up because I think between Dave and I, we can get Chuck Garric's attention on this show.
Yeah.
Like between his connections, and I'm sure I can bug Universal until they reach out to somebody. I'm sure that we can get in touch with Chuck Garric and warn him of the charity boxing event that you are openly challenging him to tonight.
No. Since you're a wrestling fan and I do a wrestling show, a wrestling match between you two.
There we go. Chuck Garric, Kelly Toole wrestling match.
No, let's not do that. Chuck would clobber me. It would be a bloodbath. Chuck would just destroy me, and I have huge respect for Chuck. I love Bisto Blanco. I'm a huge fan. It's this story that you guys are continuing to go through. Anyway.
It's called The Truth, Kelly. Yeah. That's what that story's called.
Okay. So I was directly behind him in a breakfast line, and I didn't punch him, okay?
Oh, so he got off lucky that time, huh?
We're the band picture with Bisto Blanco, which was awesome.
Oh, nice.
And again, no threat. Super nice people. So just leave Chuck out of this, okay? Anyway. So where we disagree, so while we have 6 that we're in strong agreement on, there are 5 albums that we differ significantly on, and in a couple cases, very significantly on. And those albums are Raise Your Fist and Yell, Hey Stupid, Trash, Paranormal, and Dragontown. So
okay.
So I thought we'd do is I'll just kind of start working up the list, and we'll definitely be taking a stop. Dragontown's the first one we're going to come to on Dave's list. But,
okay.
Before then, see if there's anybody else that wants to give a shout out or anything else about an album. But Dave's list starting at 28, going forward, Pretty's for You, Easy Action, Muscle of Love, Welcome to My Nightmare, the sequel, Lace and Whiskey, Zipper Catches Skin. Are you a big Zorro's Ascent fan, Dave?
I am. I do love that song, yes.
Me too. Love that song. So Dragontown. So in Dragontown, you had it 12 positions lower than Mike and 9 positions lower than me. And it's going to be a long time before we talk about Brutal Planet, which was Dragontown was kind of the sequel to.
Yes.
So I'm going to hand it over to Mike as the prosecutor to see if he has some questions for you.
Yeah, this was the one that I actually questioned the most, because I do feel like it's so much in line with Brutal Planet, and you have Brutal Planet really high, which I loved. So how come the stark difference between these two on the list?
Well, I'm sure we all agree, like you said earlier, there is no bad Alice Cooper album, and once you get past Pretty's for You and Easy Action, I love all these albums. They're like the soundtrack to my life. But you just said the reason why I have it so low, because Brutal Planet is very high on my list, and I felt like Dragontown is kind of like a sequel, but not nearly as good as the first. It's kind of like, I don't know, Police Academy 2. It's got the same kind of theme to it, but it just doesn't have the same spirit. And that's why it falls so low on my list. Some really good songs on Dragontown, but I think if you go song by song, it's nowhere near as good as Brutal Planet.
I think that's a solid argument. What do you think, Kelly?
Yeah, I agree. I'm not sure. So Brutal Planet is a stronger album for sure. I'm not sure Dragontown's that much weaker, but again, it gets tough because there's all this, just one slight little flaw or whatever could move something so far down the list. But that makes sense, and I would be in complete agreement that in terms of looking at the two, while they're pretty similar, I mean they're in the same spirit. Dragontown is the weaker of the two efforts. So
yeah, that's just my opinion. You guys differ, but I really love Brutal Planet. I mean, it's very high on my list. I just didn't think the sequel came nearly as close.
Makes sense. So then at 21 on Dave's list is Alice Cooper Goes to Hell. Mike and my lists are pretty. I mean, there's a couple little differences here and there, and there's some heated debates on a few things, but there's not a huge divergence. This is one of the albums, though, that you may be the voice of reason here, because you've got it 5 higher than Mike. And 6 lower than me. So you're kind of like right in the middle there. I just re-listened to it the other day, and it's not high art. It's whatever, but it's an entertaining album. But so I think you're the voice of reason and put it in a good spot. So, now,
I'm ready.
Okay, Mr. Belinsky. Opening arguments on Paranormal. I will join you, but opening arguments. I actually have it higher on my list than you do. Paranormal.
So I am definitely curious to hear this one, because one of the things that as we've all already kind of established, none of these are bad albums. So none of this is nitpicking among fans. But with Paranormal, Kelly and I definitely both put this album really high on our lists. So I was definitely curious what didn't click about Paranormal for you.
What's interesting, and I'm going to blame both you guys when it comes to Paranormal. And here's why. Is I actually heard your guys' review of Paranormal before I actually sat down to listen to it. I bought it, but I didn't have the opportunity to listen to it. And both of you wax poetic on this album, like how great this album was, and it's been his best album in years. And I listened to it and I enjoy it. And again, we're nitpicking here. We're fans, but I didn't really I don't think it lived up to the hype. That's number one. And number two is he didn't really do any songs off of Paranormal Live. Like, other than just one or two songs from this album, I think if I would have heard more of these songs, like Rats, if you would have played Rats live or some of these other songs live, I probably would have fell a little deeper in love with this album than I had. But I think that live element really cost this album in the long run for me.
And that is something that Kelly and I have both talked about on certain albums, particularly Trash, where we felt like the songs were much stronger in a live setting. And that gave us more of an appreciation for the songs.
Yeah.
Anything to add, Kelly?
Yeah, it was, so he is doing Paranoid Personality on the most recent concert DVD. And and as expected, you see that thing live and it's like, 10 times better. It was a good song already, but something about when Alice does something live. Woman of Mass Distraction is always the best example to me. It's just lights out live. And Rats would have been another fantastic addition to the live show. But again, he's got the problem of he's got all these songs and only so much time to play. But yeah, I could see where if he has a couple more live tracks to listen to, it would help reinforce and lift up Paranormal. But yeah, that was kind of the.
I would love it. I would love it if he did like Iron Maiden and would, when he puts out a new album, go out on tour and do almost the entire new album. Like he kind of did that for Brutal Planet. And I think that's probably like the last time he really did that amount of songs off a new album in concert. I wish he would do more of that, because a lot of these albums over the last like 10 to 15 years kind of get forgotten because he doesn't really do a lot of tracks, in concert. So.
Yeah, and back to the Dragontown conversation, Brutal Planet concert, almost tons of Brutal Planet from there.
Yes.
Dragontown, the following year or two, there was a song or two, but it was nowhere the representation of Brutal Planet. Yeah. Okay, so then we're at Paranormal at 20 for Dave, then A Last Temptation, Detroit Stories, and we ended up, as Dave thought, we're close. We're two positions apart. In this list, 2 positions is nothing. So we're all basically on the same page on Detroit Stories. Alice Cooper's one we were super in alignment with. As with Dirty Diamonds, Special Forces, Flush the Fashion. So now we get into a couple we disagree on. They're fairly close together. Dave has Trash at 13 and Hey Stupid at 11. Those are either 13, and these are exact matches. Trash is 12 higher than Mike and I had it, and Hey Stupid is 13 higher than Mike and I had it. So
I love those albums.
Yeah. Why?
All right, so let me ask you guys, because I don't know if you ever really said it in your show, and if you did, I apologize. But when did you start listening to Alice Cooper? What were the albums that introduced you to Alice Cooper?
Why don't you go first, Dr. Mike?
So for me, it was actually Love It to Death. My dad had Love It to Death, the vinyl. And I remember just going through records as a kid and came across it. It looked interesting and listening to that. So that was actually my introduction to Alice.
Okay. So and how about you, Kelly?
So mine was Welcome to My Nightmare, which I know has a special place in your heart in terms of as an album. So Welcome to My Nightmare was the first, followed by From the Inside, and then Flush Fashion Special Forces. So it was kind of getting into the Alice stuff. And as I started to hear all of those, that's when I started buying all the original albums and kind of working my way through it. But
that's all. See, the first album I had ever heard or bought from Alice Cooper was Constrictor, and I know we'll get into that in a little bit. But the Trash album, that was the first time I saw Alice in concert, was on that tour. So I think just that vibe of being able to see him for the first time, I think is a big reason why I love that album as much as I do. Because when the album first came out, I was like with you guys, like especially coming off the heels of Raise Your Fist and Yell, I was like, oh my gosh, he's sold out and this is so Bon Jovi-like and poppy. But you know what though? I kind of liked it that at that time, here in New York and New Jersey, his song was being played on Z100, which was like the top 40 radio station. I thought that was really cool that that now this next generation, the masses, are able to listen to Alice Cooper. And I love every song on that album. I think every song on that album is catchy. It's a perfect summer album. That's the type of album you put on with the driving in your car with the windows down. I love that album. Well, obviously that's why I have it so high, but I think it's great.
So between you got Hey Stupid higher than Trash. Why did you do that? Was there?
I think there's a little bit more maturity to that album compared to Trash. Like Trash is definitely like mindless, like lyrically, but there's a charm to that, and I think like even musicianship wise, I just think it's a more powerful, has a little bit more of a punch to it. Hey Stupid, but again, that's where like I look at the sequel, because I think those two albums are kind of together, like Brutal Planet and Dragontown. But this is where like I think the sequel, it's like Godfather 2. You know, it's like it's just a little bit better than the original. I could tell you guys disagree with me so much.
No, I was actually going to say, I think for a lot of people, particularly my age, I would say that Trash and Hey Stupid was their introduction to Alice Cooper.
Yeah,
definitely. Like it would have been mine had my dad not had that record. Like that would have been how because of Wayne's World with Feed My Frankenstein in it and things like that. So that would have been my introduction. Poison being on the radio. So.
Yeah, and I think when we go back to those when we talked about them and all of that, they're very solid rock albums, and the reason, at least for me, they suffer on my Alice Cooper list is that both I think kind of Trash and Hey Stupid, somebody else could have done those two albums, maybe not quite as good as Alice, but they could have come close. But there aren't too many people that could do Love It to Death or Welcome to My Nightmare or $1 Billion Babies that are just
agreed.
And so it was that it had a little less Alice-ness, and if it was mindless lyrics, AC/DC is always available. If you wanted to listen to some mindless lyrics, but
better watch out, AC/DC. Kelly's up here threatening Rockstar. You guys might be next.
But you know what I also love about Hey Stupid too, and this might be a reason why maybe you look back at that not as fondly as I do, but like that tour, he didn't even put he didn't have the makeup on, he didn't do the guillotine, and like I kind of dug that showed like a different side. He wasn't relying on a lot of the old tricks, and it made you kind of miss it and want it back. But I kind of dug that stage set for the Hey Stupid tour. I thought was awesome, and it was so different than anything he had done before that or after that.
Fair enough. Okay, it's time. So we got Hey Stupid. So let's have some good fellowship here. Constrictor, we all like Constrictor. Constrictor's cool and underrated, beloved album. It's pretty impressive. I would say we're all very big Alice Cooper fans, and it just is so cool to me to see Constrictor kind of so high on all three of our lists.
Yes,
it was, it's not a work of art, but darn it, it's a fun album, so that was cool to see. School's Out was another one we were dead on, very much in agreement on, and now the biggie, Raise Your Fist and Yell, which for your reference, I actually have below Easy Action on my list. It is
great.
It is not. It is not the floor, but it is one below the floor. And there, but that was one where you have it 16 position. So this is 28 albums. Out of the 28 albums, you have it 16 higher than Mike. And these are the exceptions. There's only a couple of these, but this is a big one. And then 19 higher than me. So, you don't like the cover though, right? Let's go with it.
I know you guys, and thankfully I didn't, but I almost got that cover tattooed on my right arm. I was very close. I actually had the guy ready to do it, and he didn't take my credit card. Like I had an American Express card at the time, and they didn't take it, or else right now I would be showing you my Raise Your Fist and Yell tattoo. So
that would have been very awkward.
Very awkward.
Now Kelly and I have actually both talked about getting Alice Cooper tattoos. having done, our list and talked about him so much. So and Kelly has no tattoos.
Nope.
And I have no tattoos either. So
okay.
my first tattoo would have been the Raise Your Fist and Yell cover on my. I've always been a bit of a metal guy, so like that's definitely his '80s heavy metal album. I love that album. I love Freedom. I love Roses on White Lace, Prince of Darkness. Like, there's not a bad song on that album, and I'm so glad on this last tour before COVID, he was doing Roses on White Lace. As a matter of fact, when the last time we had Nita on our show, she said afterwards, she's like, "We're gonna do Roses on White Lace," and I was like, "Yes!" Like, she knew how much I love that album. So I'm just a huge fan of that album. Top to bottom, there's not one bad song on Raise Your Fist and Yell. Kane Roberts on guitar, are you kidding me? It's awesome. Oh, what a great album. You guys are nuts, man.
I'm going to let Kelly do all the talking on this one.
So Freedom, I'll give you Freedom. Freedom's a good song. Freedom could have been on Constrictor. It was... so I like Freedom quite a bit. So Roses, and I saw some stuff that Nita was actually talking about being excited about it too, because I think there's some guitar stuff that she can do in that song and she's amazing, that she was excited to be able to kind of, do and all that. So that makes me a little, because Roses on White, that's like, so I was at one of the shows where that was now part of the set list, and I was like, okay, it's going to be live, so I'm going to like it better. This is going to help me get over my Raise Your Fist and Yell problem. And I was like, nope. I'm still not.
Wow.
It didn't move me. I mean, Nito's awesome. And so that part is, and it is impressive. It's still, it is still really great guitar stuff. But to me, my biggest thing there is that while we talked a little bit earlier on Hey Stupid and Trash, that somebody else could have done it. I really feel that's definitely true for Raise Your Fist and Yell. But you do make a good point, that there are, I'm probably a little harsher on it than I need to be. And I think a component of it was, I think the album cover, I just kind of really threw me. I wasn't, of all of Alice's stuff, that was one I just wasn't as excited about. I think upon, it might have been a spite ranking that I put it below Easy Action. And I should have, at a minimum, I think I should adjust it to leave the original two group, have the appropriate floor for the Alice Cooper album, something like that. But it's just...
I don't know. I love, like, even when I listen to it for the first time, I can almost see the stage show without actually being at the concert. Like, chop, chop, chop into Gale, into Roses on White. Like, it just fits perfectly. And again, I get it. It's kind of mindless, as a lot of those albums are, not just from Alice, but like just music in general in that mid '80 to late '80 period. I just think it's a great rocking album. I just love it. That's why it's number 8 on my list.
Yes, indeed. You can't be right all the time. That's the way I look at it.
Wow. Okay. All right. Oh boy.
That was, but you have weakened my resolve against Raise Your Fist.
I don't think so. I actually think you hate it more.
Nope. I'm trying to find a way to like it. I'm working hard. Like I'm gonna find.
My biggest takeaway from that exchange.
Have it below Easy Action. How do you have it below? It's unbelievable to me. At least Mike has it above Easy Action.
Yeah.
So
we actually on his list, it's up there a little bit. I got to look here and see. It's up at 23. That's Zipper Catches Skin, level.
Yeah.
So he had it there, but yeah. And I do think a little bit of it too is that to a degree, there's obviously, even though we joke about it, there's like no wrong answer on this. It's what you like, and you put it where you do, and then that's it. But I think some of the things that oftentimes catch Mike and my attention, Mike, you can kind of disagree if you want, but when you get into some of the cleverness on either the kind of wordplay or storytelling or some things going on there that are just kind of crafty, and kind of interesting that when Alice is able to weave those into some great guitar rock, that's like his special place, and that's like a cool area, as opposed to just really strong hard rock execution that's good. And so I think that's why albums that have a little bit more of that in it tend to do a little bit better on our lists. I don't know, Mike. Your thoughts?
My biggest thing that I'd like to add to this is now not only do we have Kelly threatening Chuck Garric openly on multiple shows, he's now questioned the guitar playing abilities of Nita Strauss.
No,
That's terrible.
We all heard that. He said she did not elevate that song live.
Please. I just, I think Nita is probably too smart to sit through an entire squat cobbler and listen to the whole thing.
You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised, but
I believe if she would listen through it, she would find that Mike is vastly misrepresenting what was just said. We're a huge fan of the current touring band that's been kind of with Alice now for a little while. And so you've seen them a lot in concert. So would you say this is your favorite lineup so far?
It's to me, it's my favorite lineup since the original.
Yeah.
To me. And I'm glad they're finally going to be able to record an album together, because that's the one thing, and maybe that's a reason why Paranormal is so low on my list, because I really was hoping that band was going to play on that album. And Detroit Stories, I understand it a little bit more because of the spirit of that album, but I was really hoping that this band is so good and they're so tight and they have such great chemistry together. It's a shame that they haven't recorded anything yet.
Yeah, boy, and it's just there's no weak link. There's nothing. I mean, every one of those individuals is just a craftsperson in what they can do. Because I love Tommy Hendrickson's stuff. Ryan Roxy, I've been a huge fan of. Another person I've been close enough to punch, by the way, twice. And so
he can't stop himself. See?
Well, unit of measurement. Again, no punches were thrown. And of course Chuck and Glenn Sobel, they're just, I don't know, they're just so good. And of course Nita. And so it's such an amazing group. So it is exciting. Mike and I are taking credit that the next album is going to feature the original band, because we've been whining about it over the last several years.
Rightfully so. You guys have been waving the flag, so that's awesome.
Yeah, so I'm excited to see it, because they're gifted musicians, and particularly I know I've seen some of the writing, and I think Tommy does a lot also just kind of the orchestration and of the guitar stuff. So it'd be cool to see. So then we're back to the list. We've got Dada a little higher than Mike and I had it, but still in the park. Killer and Brutal Planet we're very, very much in agreement on. And now comes the real interesting thing, which is there's been this ongoing, and if you've listened to it all, there's been a progression from originally, as a favorite of Mike, because I didn't want to hurt his baby feelings, when he had originally had, Love It to Death as number one. And we were going through in order, so pretty quickly it got that spot. When $1 Billion Babies came up as a review, because I knew he'd be pouting for the rest of the show if I challenged his number one, I put them originally as a tie. I said, okay, I'm not going to say one's better than the other. And then so for the next 6 or 7 shows, he just mercilessly berated me about that. Told me to make a decision. So I did. I made the right decision and made $1 Billion Babies Alice's greatest album. So Mike and I are at those two, 1 and 2. Mm-hmm. You've got them in the top 4. You've got Welcome to My Nightmare, From the Inside, $1 Billion Babies, and Love It to Death. A list of albums I think that Mike and I would both agree are absolutely in the very top of the list. And it gets really hard to go through. So it is interesting to point out that Dave, the guest, who's always right, does have $1 Billion Babies ahead of Love It to Death.
It's so close, though. It's so
close. It is close.
I mean, yeah, if you asked me another day, I would probably have them flip-flop. That's tough. You're right.
Yep. Well, the day we asked you is the one that mattered, and it mattered because you put $1 Billion Babies ahead. From the Inside, I had toyed with putting it up a little bit higher on my list as well. I had it at 4. I mean, it's just so tough when you get to these ones.
really hard.
But so welcome to my nightmare. So that is actually different than so. Mike's a love it to death guy. I'm $1 Billion Babies. Welcome to my nightmare. How does that, of all of Alice's stuff, why does that one stand out to you as your favorite?
Well, as I said before, Constrictor was the first album I bought by Alice Cooper, and I really didn't know the history of Alice Cooper. I was strictly getting it because I heard the song on the Nightmare. I went to go see Nightmare. I'm not Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th in the theater, and I loved the song during the credits, which was "He's Back, the Man Behind the Mask." So I went and bought Constrictor, and I loved it. I thought it was a really good album. So then I was interested to buy more from him, and I really didn't make the connection with all these other songs that he had. And the one that I picked out, and I remember it, I went to the Squared Circle at the Garden State Plaza in Paramus, New Jersey, and this is 1986. I bought 2 albums. I bought Master of Puppets by Metallica and Alice Cooper, Welcome to My Nightmare. And I must have played Master of Puppets about 18 times before I even grabbed Welcome to My Nightmare for the first time. And I played it. Nobody was home in my house. My parents were away, and it was around midnight. And I played Welcome to My Night very first time, and it was unlike anything I'd ever heard before. And after hearing that album, then I had to buy everything from Alice Cooper, like right after hearing that. So that was kind of like, that was the drug, that was the one that got me into him. And that was the gateway drug, where now after hearing that album, I had to buy absolutely everything from Alice. And I still remember the day that I heard it. I still remember the way I felt when I heard it for the first time. And I think it's just it's to me the greatest concept album of all time. And I just love it top to bottom. I think it's a masterpiece. It's by far my favorite album, not just by Alice Cooper, but ever my favorite album.
Yeah, it is. I mean,
you disagree.
No, I don't. This is what I agree. Mike probably disagrees. I don't. I mean, because it was early for me too. Welcome to my. I mean, it was the first one. It was the first one I heard, and that's when I started to go, crap. This is something I need to investigate and understand a little bit better. And ended up shortly after that having an opportunity to go see the From the Inside tour. Which was amazing.
That's amazing.
And so that was, and so then I'm like, okay, this is the guy. And I did basically the same path you were, in that my gateway drug was Welcome to My Nightmare, and then I kind of went through. It is special. It is of everything that he's done. He's done several coherent kind of conceptual albums, things tying together, but nothing to the level of, in my opinion, nothing to the level of Welcome to My Nightmare. And just Steven. I mean, there's nothing on the album you can pick at, because it's all just really well crafted, so it's a good deal. Mr. Belinsky, any thoughts you'd like to add on Dave's number one?
So I actually came to Welcome to My Nightmare a little bit later, but really what elevated, and I think that was the only one that we would have to go back and check, but the only one I think I moved positions on the list as we went through it, like pretty significantly. It actually went up for me. I think I had a little bit lower, and then they came out with the DVD, and it had the Welcome to My Nightmare TV special, and then also a show from that tour. And again, going back to what we had already said about how the live environment really elevates a lot of these songs, it just made it even better to me. So I think it actually moved up a spot or two on my list after watching the DVD, even though we had already ranked it initially at that point. But that I know for a lot of people, that was kind of their introduction to Alice. So that makes sense to me completely. And I'm glad that really I'm glad we're all in agreement on is From the Inside, because I love that album as well. That was a really hard one not to put in those like top 2 or 3 spots for me. And it really, for me, just came down to the mixing of the album was my biggest complaint, which a lot of people have been mad about. I've gotten some comments from people about that, but I don't like the mix of the album. I love the album. That's one I really wish they would go back and do like a deluxe version of, where they really go back and remaster it properly. I just think a better mix is the only thing that's keeping that album from being perfect to me.
Wow. I think it's his best written album. Like, it's so well written, each song. It's fantastic. And I wish they did. Like, I wish they would do that with all of Alice's albums, where we get remastered each and every one with bonus tracks and stuff like that. I would love that. So
yeah, I absolutely love those songs. And like we talked about when we reviewed it, it's just nitpicky stuff of like his vocals are too low in the mix and certain things. The background singers are way too high. The synth stuff is over the guitars in parts. And clearly that wasn't intentional. It's just an uneven mix on some of the songs. So that of all of them really needs that deluxe album treatment. That's the only thing that keeps that from being, for me, at that Love It to Death, Billion Dollar Babies level.
So, fun question for you. If you had somebody who you were wanting to really sell on Alice Cooper, and I know it could vary on people's different musical tastes, but if you were going to say, what's my entry album to get folks to want to listen to more Alice Cooper, that's somewhat representative of kind of his work, although it's been really diverse, what album would you pick?
I would probably pick Love It to Death. Like, I think that's like the perfect like introductory album. And even though Love It to Death, and listen, we're nitpicking here, Love It to Death's in my top 4, but my 2 favorite Alice Cooper songs are, my all-time favorite is Ballad of Dwight Fry. Like, I think that kind of like, and then my second favorite is 18. So I think those 2 songs you got are the perfect representation of Alice Cooper, because you have Ballad of Dwight Fry that's like so out there, and the goth and the horror of it. And then you have 18. It's just like a straight ahead classic, just rock sing along song. So I think Love It to Death would be the perfect album to introduce somebody that's never listened to Alice before.
Okay,
I completely agree.
Yeah, of course you do. Like, when it's barely in his top 4, just barely in his top 4. So, yeah, I'd have 2 options, because if the person wasn't particularly sharp, I'd go with Flush Fashion, because I just think that can hook them in really quick. It's just it's super fun, and those types of things. And if they're a little bit more appreciative of complexity and some stuff going on, I think From the Inside's a really good way to say, hey, this is the kind of stuff this guy could produce. But Love It to Death's a pretty good choice as well, as would be Billion Dollar Baby. So, although you're rolling in a little bit of I Love the Dead and Raped and Freezing and some stuff like that might be a bit of a bigger pill to swallow than starting with Love It to Death. So,
and you guys have talked about this on the show before, like a lot of the lyrics and like a lot of the fun lyrics probably don't translate well to 2021.
Yeah.
So I think Love It to Death is the perfect one.
Yeah, I think it's just every once in a while you do bump into this like this is not aging well, and unfortunately, there's one of those sitting on Detroit Stories. It's like started aging poorly up the moment it was put on the album. But what can you say? Excellent. Well, apologies for it. We were getting this set up to go. I had committed to a time for it to start. I missed that.
No, gave me the wrong phone number to reach you at, which was very interesting.
Yeah,
but no, I'm so glad we did this, man. This was so much fun. I really appreciate coming on. It's awesome.
Yeah, we loved having you, and hope you're open to a return visit. Hopefully we get that group album back. You think you'd be a fantastic person to have on and go with us track by track on it and see where we land if you are so interested.
No, absolutely. And now that I know that I have 2 Alice Cooper fanatics that I could like shoot text to and send pictures to and stuff, because I honestly don't have a lot of people that are big Alice Cooper fans. He's kind of as much of a legend that he is. You guys are doing such a tremendous job of putting stuff out. There's not a lot of books about Alice Cooper. You guys have the only podcast that I know of that talk about Alice Cooper. Like, so many bands are talked about to death or written about to death, and unfortunately Alice is not one of them.
Yeah, that's true, and it's been cool as we've we've been doing various different things as either podcasts or YouTube stuff for a number of years, and we started. We both were big Alice fans, and we said we ought to go through album by album, and so we started that journey. It took us about a year and a half, I think, to get through really
Sounds about right.
the whole catalog, and it was nice along the road because you do eventually those were our most watched videos. Eventually, over time, it's just people would start to come in and take a look at them. So it was really cool. Some interesting early comments when our first couple came out that didn't make a whole lot of sense, but it's been great, and we made a couple connections. We had, like I said, the guy came on for Raise Your Fist and Yell and all that, but this is huge. We're super glad that to have connected. Really do appreciate you joining us because it's fun to talk with somebody as passionate about Alice as we are. So it's good stuff.
This was fun, man.
We'll have you back for another one. I got a lot of work to undo here from Mike to try to bust some myths and do some things, but I'm used to that by now. And yep, it's been great. Really appreciate you joining us. We will have you back again. And so I have nothing else to add for this week except for thanks for listening, folks.